I always tell people it's like the easy part is writing the book. The hard part comes after you're done. Because usually we all enjoy that writing process so much. That's not that hard for most people. But once you get done trying to get it published, getting the right cover art, finding your market, connecting with that market, actually getting them to engage with you, that's where all the really hard work is. And if you can afford it, get a publicist, because that makes it a lot easier. They will go out, they will find podcasts for you to be on, they will find people to send your media kit to and get you noticed. But if you can't afford that, then you need to do a lot of legwork yourself. You need to start contacting podcasts. You need to start talking to the people who own your local bookstore. Talk to the library and see about doing a reading at the library. I mean, get them to put your books on the shelves in the library. And there's just so many little things that you can do. There's like the little free libraries in a lot of people's neighborhoods. Go put your books in there with a note. It's like, please read this. Go put a review up on Goodreads if you liked it. You know, here's my email address. Contact me. Let me know what you thought. You know, get ARC readers. You can go onto like Facebook and find groups of ARC readers and connect with them. Have them build a street team of ARC readers who will read your book and post reviews of it everywhere. There's a lot of things you can do that are fairly inexpensive that get you out in the public attention, but it does take a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have a cohort and a partner in crime who is from the U.S. over in Germany now, and we've been on a podcast together talking about all the great things that she's doing, and I get great inspiration every time I get to speak to my guest. And Dianne's here with us today. Welcome, Dianne, back to This is Living the Next Chapter. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, it's so great to be back because we had so much fun talking the last time.
I know, and I saw this in my inbox, and I'm like, yes, I get some more time to be inspired and to grow. You are the host of the Book Banter podcast. Tell me about your podcast.
I started that as a less expensive way to advertise the books that I write. And it has turned into such an incredible networking opportunity for me because being over here in Germany, I'm very isolated from other English speaking authors. And, you know, there are a lot of writing groups and everything here, but they're not necessarily authors. It's people who like to do it just more for themselves, that they just enjoy creative writing. And I don't get to sit around and talk with authors. The ones that I have connected with here are German, and my German is not that good. So we don't get to have in-depth conversations. So I am absolutely loving interviewing all of these other authors from different countries and different genres and getting to network with other people who have actually gone through the process of writing an entire book, doing the publication, trying to do the marketing. And it has turned into just something that I'm absolutely loving. And it's being picked up by quite a few people because just this week, I had 3 more publicists contact me about booking their clients on my podcast. So now I'm up to like 6 publicists that I'm working with who are just bringing me guests. So I don't have to search for guests anymore. That's so fantastic.
Can you go back to the early days of your podcast? How hard was it to get the podcast off the ground? It sounds like it's doing well now.
Oh my goodness. Okay. The first year and the second year were just total polar opposites. The first year I was filling a lot of time just reading my own books that I write. I was begging all of my author friends and people who work in publicity and had anything in any way, shape, or form to do with books coming onto my show. And it was a challenge trying to fill up all of the episodes. And then for whatever reason, people started listening to it and liking it and started contacting me to come on. And it has made my life so much easier. And I'm getting people who are like traditionally published authors who are on, several bestseller lists with all of their different books. And it's just been incredible. The changes that have taken And I could not even sit here and tell you what it is that I did that brought those changes about. I have no idea. I have no idea what it was that was clicking with people, but something about it did.
You have the perfect voice for podcasting. I love listening to your show. You have amazing guests. It's like one of my favorite podcasts. So I've been telling people about it as well and telling some of my guests, hey, you should go check out this podcast. So I love finding someone else in the space who is doing such unique and creative things. Again, every time I get a chance to have some time in your calendar, I feel like I walk away better. So it's really good. So I really just keep going, keep doing what you're doing. And you have, something unique happening coming up on your podcast. Can you let us know? There's a birthday coming up or something? What's happening?
Yes, next week is my birthday.
Yay.
And as a gift to myself, I am taking over my own podcast and talking about my books because I just finished the last book in my Into the West Saga serial that I write as Dianne Burckhardt. And that book actually drops on the 19th. And unfortunately, my podcast doesn't come out until the 20th. But I will be reading from my new book and talking about all of the other books in the serial and the 2 book projects that I have coming up after this, because I am going to start writing now as Dianne Burckhardt. And I have 2 books that I'm working on, which is my medical autobiography about all of the brain surgeries that I had, which is called Free Bad Haircuts with Each Craniotomy. And then
Yeah.
I have an FBI profiler thriller that I'm writing that's called The Touch. And I actually have a degree in journalism, which, I did for many years. And then I kind of started getting a little burnt out with always reporting on hard news, crime, and all of this stuff where I was just sitting around talking about it. And I decided to go back to college to get a different degree so I could do something about crime. And I got a degree in forensic criminology where I actually specialized in criminal profiling and evidence collection for courtroom presentation. And I even did some special studies in sex crimes. And I never got to use that degree because of the brain surgeries, because I had the accident that caused all the brain surgeries 1 month before I finished my degree. And I always wanted to do something with all of that information. And so now I'm going to start writing some crime novels.
Okay, like you gave me like 20 topics to talk about just in that little piece. Okay, well, let's jump back. A pen name. Talk about that a little bit. I'm very curious about any type of pen name that an author uses or writes under, the rationale behind it, kind of how that all works for promotion. Can you kind of give us some insight on pen names?
For this one, I had a very specific reason for doing this because I really I'd always wanted to be an author, but I had never made any plans to actually become one. I was working in the health food industry and I was really enjoying that. I had started going back to school again to study nutrition. But then I met my husband and we got married. And because of his job, we ended up moving to Denmark. And I did not speak Danish and I didn't have any kind of formal education that was working out for finding a good job for me in Denmark because I couldn't speak Danish. And the things that I was trained for, you had to be able to speak Danish well to be able to do them. I started trying to figure out, okay, what can I do? What can I do over here? And I thought, okay, I can go online and start doing some freelance journalism work. And I still was like struggling to find some things that I could actually write on at that time, because this was years ago, whenever freelancing online programs were just starting to take off. And I ended up getting a couple of offers to write ghostwriting some books. I did some health books. I did a Western, which I had never thought about writing Westerns. And it turned out to be so much fun that is what enticed me to go ahead and try and write one for myself. But I still had like all of these fears that I wasn't going to be really good at writing because after all the brain surgeries, I lost a lot of my language skills. I struggled to find words. I would often repeat myself, and I would repeat myself when I write too. I would be typing along and say, he walked into the room. So, and that's one of those things where some programs don't always catch that because the words are spelled right. It doesn't always tell you you're repeating the same words over again. Some programs do, some programs don't. And so I was really nervous about writing a book and putting it out there under my own name. Because when I was doing as a ghostwriter, those people were my gatekeepers. I would write the book, I would give it to them. And if they didn't like it, they just wouldn't pay me for it. And if they wanted to, they could just edit it and put it out there in the world. But that was their responsibility to take care of it because it was going out under their name. And they liked all the work. Everybody paid for everything that I wrote. So I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a try. But I don't know. I'm still terrified that I'm going to do a bad job. So I decided to do it under a pen name. And I figured that way, if it's not my name, it's not my picture, if they're really horrible, I can just walk away and nobody will ever know it was me who did that.
Yeah.
And my father agreed to let me use a picture I'd taken of him when I was in college doing photojournalism. And he was actually my age that I was at the time that I was writing the books. So I thought, okay, this will work. And my maiden last name was Stevens. So I just dropped the last S and I used that for the first name and then my married name Burckhardt to create Stephen Burckhardt. And that's what I wrote all of the Into the West books under, was Stephen Burckhardt. And my dad's picture is the face of Stephen Burckhardt. And it works out great because my dad's name is Steve. So
okay, so how do you, under a pen name, how do you do your promotion? You can't really do a book signing in a little bookstore and sign autographed books and talk to your community. How I have no idea. How do you even do that?
I didn't. Basically, the only kind of advertising that I did for the first 5 years that I was working on this series was just, print ads up on my social media. That was it. That was all I did. Every once in a while, I would get a request for an interview somewhere, especially once the first book won a couple of awards for historical fiction. But I'm like, how is this going to work? It's Stephen Burckhardt who writes these books, but I'm Dianne Burckhardt, and it's really obvious that I'm not a guy. And I had talked to my dad because since he reads all the books, I'm like, you could actually go do the interview for me. But my dad hates public speaking, and he was just like, absolutely no, I'm not doing it. There's no way.
That's an interesting situation to be in. You're getting awards, you're being noticed, you're asked to speak and do all these things. Was that frustrating at all then from your side?
Very frustrating because since I couldn't do very much for advertising them, I wasn't making money off of them. I'm still just paying in to create these books because mostly the people who are buying them are my friends and family and a few people who see the ads online. I have not made a profit off of any of these. It's all more just a passion project that I'm paying to do. It's like an expensive hobby. But the last few years, I have started letting people know it's like, yeah, okay, Stephen Burckhardt is a pen name. And then it's like, yeah, okay, Stephen Burckhardt is actually my pen name. It's me who's doing it. And now I'm starting to actually put things up online that says, like Dianne Burckhardt writing as Stephen Burckhardt. So it's starting to come out a lot more.
So where's I can almost I almost know the answer to this as I ask it, but where's your comfort level now compared to early days in your author journey? Are you feeling more comfortable to now write under your name and to be more actively out there promoting your books now?
Yeah. And part of that is too, one of the reasons that I wanted to get back into writing was to use writing as therapy to rebuild my language skills. And I have managed to do that. I still have issues and I still stutter when I write, but now I have a really good editor who I pay and he understands all of the issues that I deal with. So he looks for those things in my manuscripts and will often work with me to help me find ways to remember things. Because that's one of my big issues is I have short-term memory issues. So I will write something like I'll be talking about the sheriff in my town, and I'll forget the rules for how you use a capital for when you're using sheriff or marshal, because there's sometimes that you capitalize that, there's sometimes that you don't. And I was always forgetting the rules. And my editor works with me to find different devices to help me to remember the rules so that I'm not having him correct the same things constantly. And it's been really great having this person to work with who understands and is willing to find avenues to help me become a better writer with my issues that I deal with.
I think so many of us struggle with imposter syndrome and dealing with, like, who's going to read my stuff, who's going to interact with me and what I'm putting in the world. But then to add a layer of having to deal with your medicals and all the things going on with you physically, was that a struggle for you in early days to say, like, can I do this?
Not really, just because I have had so many years to practice just accepting what I have to deal with, that I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know I'm going to forget things. I know all of this stuff is just going to happen. And there's nothing I can do to stop that. It is. It's kind of like if you're tall, spending your day worrying that you're so tall, you know, there's no point in it. It doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. You're going to stay tall, you know, and that's the same thing with this. I know what my limitations are. I know what my challenges are, and I just find a way to work around them and go on with there and don't bother about worrying about it, because there's no point. There's no point to worry about how it's going to be perceived, because I can't change how anybody perceives what I do. That's their issue. I just have to do the absolute best that I can, work on my craft, make sure that what I'm putting out into the world is good quality work, and then let everything fall as it does after that.
I love that answer. I really do. I really do. Talk about the new book. Talk about the story. What are we going to find when we crack open this new book that's coming? What can you give us some insight to some of the characters and what's going to happen here?
Well, this whole saga is basically a family drama. There is the McBride family, who is central to this entire story, but then there's all these extra characters on the side who come in to play in different books. But the story follows Margaret McBride and her children, Elizabeth and Connor. Margaret is a young widow in New York City in 1859, and she just cannot handle taking care of herself and her family on her own. So she turns her children over to the Catholic Family Aid Society in New York City for them to be placed into another home, because she's just heartbroken watching them go to bed hungry, not being able to keep them in good health. And so she does the ultimate thing and gives them to the orphanage so that they can be taken care of by somebody else. And she's assumes that since it's her Catholic Church that runs this Foundling Aid Society, that they will just be adopted in her area and she could maybe watch them grow up from afar. But the children end up being put on the orphan train and taken out into the Wild West. And she is just heartbroken, and she almost dies of heartbreak. But luckily she survives, and she finds good people who help her to carry on. Her children are taken to all of these different towns and meet different prospective parents, and things happen along the way with the people and the other children on the train. And the whole story follows them getting into a home in the Kansas territory, and then how their lives progress from there. And then the very last book that comes out, which is the one that drops on September 19th, which is the Into the West Family Ties. And it wraps up this whole saga. It brings everybody's stories to a very satisfying ending, who my editor even told me brought a few tears to his eyes when he read it. that
Nice.
he thought that it was just so beautifully wrapped up that it leaves you feeling very satisfied that there are no loose ends anywhere. Everybody has a good conclusion to their storyline.
So, what was the impetus to even write this saga? Where did the idea come from?
I had a friend, and I can never remember if it's her mother or her grandmother, but one of them came to Kansas on the orphan train. And she had
Really?
told me some stories
Okay.
from her relative that they did not have a good experience, that they were basically adopted as an indentured servant to the family. And when the parents died, she did not inherit anything. It was her and her brother. And he was like, I'm not sharing anything with you either. I don't care that they didn't leave you anything. And it was just so heartbreaking. So it made me look into the orphan train experience. And there's actually an orphan train museum in Concordia, Kansas. And my mother and I took a weekend trip and went up there. And it's an amazing place. They have all kinds of displays, and you can even go up and listen to some of the orphan train riders telling their own stories. And it's just the history from the United States at that time. And they actually used these trains for quite a while. It was just incredible, the things that a lot of these kids lived through. Some of them found great homes. Some of them were basically farmhands, that they were just adopted farmhands. And I was really fascinated by this history in Kansas. Then plus my dad and his sisters spent a few years in a children's home in Tulsa, Oklahoma when they were very young. Their parents got divorced, and at that time, single fathers were not given custody of children, and their mother was deemed not fit at that time to take care of them. So they were put into this orphanage for a few years until my grandfather got remarried. And one of the scenes in the foundling home actually comes directly from something that my dad told me happened to him in the children's home in Oklahoma.
I love the connection behind the scenes to all that because as readers, as we go through the book now, we have a new lens that we can kind of anticipate that part coming and then be able to identify. I love this. This is great. So are you a huge history buff? Like, is this something that you just love to dig into?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. No, really?
I really, history was always like my worst subject in college and high school. I'm fascinated with history, but I'm not really good at it. I have to do a lot of research, and I have like notebooks full of information that I have had to research to make sure that this is accurate. I mean, I would even research down to in my saloon, the saloon keep was giving sparkling water, like carbonated water to the kids that would come in. And I was like, okay, did they even have that back then? And I would be like researching everything down to like the smallest detail. Like, could they have this kind of water in the saloon to give to people? I mean, I made sure that everything was perfectly accurate. I would even check if I had somebody do a saying like in for a pound, in for a penny or whatever. I would check those sayings to make sure that they were used at that time. So it is historically accurate throughout the series.
From a non-history buff. I like that. I
I'm
like
not a
that.
history buff, but I'm really good at research.
Yeah. Um, so the book's coming out. It's the last part of the series and kind of wraps everything up. My podcast is called Living the Next Chapter. So I have to ask, even though the book's not out yet and we're getting there, what is the next chapter for you then? Like, there's got to be something next for you. There has to be.
I've already started outlining the next two books that I want to work on as Dianne Burckhardt. And I'm trying to write two books in tandem. One's a fiction book and one's a nonfiction book. And I figured maybe since they were so different, it might be easy enough for me to do them both at the same time. We'll see. I might end up having to do them one after the other. But one of them, the nonfiction, is my medical autobiography that talks about the accident I had, the neurological conditions that I have, and what I had to go through for recovery, because next year is actually my 20th anniversary since my last brain surgery. And I honestly, whenever I was in the hospital the last time in October, because it'll be 19 years next month. My doctor did not expect me to live. They had told my parents, come in and say your goodbyes. She's not leaving the hospital. So and I actually did die for a little while, but obviously it didn't take.
Everyone just went, wait a minute. What did Dianne just say? Yeah, I heard it too. Can we pause there for a second? You said that you died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just a few minutes.
Just a few minutes. Okay. That's a book right there. Mm-hmm. You know,
what happened was I had 7 surgeries in 6 months in 2004. 6 of those were brain surgeries. After my 5th brain surgery, I got an antibiotic-resistant MRSA staph infection in the incision site in my head. It infected the cerebral spinal fluid, which is meningitis, and it killed me. The infection was so bad. I was being seen by infectious disease specialists every day, but it really just riddled my whole body with infection, and I died at one point. But I ended up coming back. They didn't even revive me. I came back. They were just starting to do stuff to bring me back when I came back. And I ended up getting better after that point. It was like I needed a reset. Kind of like turning off your computer off and on.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, okay. Like, who has that story? I haven't met anybody who can match that one. How does living through that change a person? Your perspective.
It was a huge catalyst in my life because before I went through all of this stuff, I was very OCD. I still have obsessive compulsive disorder, but I was really, really bad before all this happened. I would do things like I had 2 sock drawers in my house. One of them had all of the socks with color and one was black and white and gray. And the ones with color were in order by the color wheel. And the other one was in order by the grayscale. I mean, my life was ordered to that minute kind of details. And after I died, I'm kind of like, yeah, just throw them all in a drawer. I don't care. It made me realize that, you can chill out. You don't have to take everything so seriously.
Again, to have in the sentence, after I died, then I saw the world this way. I'm still speechless. I know the story, and every time I hear you talk about it, I'm still speechless. So for young authors that are listening to the podcast, they're on their author journey. They maybe struggle with a little bit of insecurity about writing their book, or they're just trying to find their way. From your perspective, with all of the things you've done, and on top of that, all of the amazing authors that you've interacted with on your podcast, in your world, give us some ideas for a young author that is new to this whole thing and looking for some inspiration, some guidance. What would you say to them if they could sit down with you for a little bit?
The first thing that I would tell anybody is just do it. If you want to write, do it. Don't think about what happens next. Just write your story. Get it on paper. Even if after you get done, you decide you don't want to show anybody, that's up to you. But do it. Write it. Get it down. And then also, if you're going to put it out there in the world, you need to be aware of a few things. First of all, somebody's going to hate it. There's going to be somebody out there who absolutely hates it, thinks it's not worth reading. It's their perspective, though. They're not reading it from what you were writing it from. They're reading it from their place. They're bringing their experiences, their wants, their desires, their ideas to the reading. You're not going to connect with everybody. Don't worry about those people. They are not important to your journey. Look for the people that you connect with, the ones who are looking for what you have to say. the ones who want your message. Those are the people you need to worry about connecting with. Because anybody who has ever put out anything for public examination has people who love it, have people who hate it, have people who could not care less, have people who will come in and ridicule it without ever even reading it just because they're having a bad day and want to dog on somebody else. I mean, those are just facts. No matter who you are, no matter what you write, no matter if you're a best-selling author or a first-time author, everybody has to deal with this. It just is. It's part of the process. But you always have to remember that the important thing is just to do your best. Make sure that you are actually putting out a good quality product, and then just be proud of yourself, because you are the only person that has to be proud of you. But it's very important that you are proud of what you're putting out into the world, because if you're not, people are going to feel that. And you really need to be just putting out your best effort and then be proud of what you did.
And for two people who both have podcasts that promote authors and share the author journey and all of that, I know that I think we both agree that podcasting is a great way to promote your book.
Mm-hmm.
What other things would you say, in addition to being on our podcasts, would be another way to support the promotion of the book? A lot of authors seem to get to this point where the book is released and they think they're done, but it's really just the beginning.
Yeah.
What other things can we do?
I always tell people it's like the easy part is writing the book. The hard part comes after you're done. Because usually we all enjoy that writing process so much. That's not that hard for most people. But once you get done trying to get it published, getting the right cover art, finding your market, connecting with that market, actually getting them to engage with you, that's where all the really hard work is. And if you can afford it, get a publicist, because that makes it a lot easier. They will go out, they will find podcasts for you to be on. They will find people to send your media kit to and get you noticed. But if you can't afford that, then you need to do a lot of legwork yourself. You need to start contacting podcasts. You need to start talking to the people who own your local bookstore. Talk to the library and see about doing a reading at the library. I mean, get them to put your books on the shelves in the library. And there's just so many little things that you can do. There's like the little free libraries in a lot of people's neighborhoods. Go put your books in there with a note. It's like, please read this. Go put a review up on Goodreads if you liked it. You know, here's my email address. Contact me. Let me know what you thought. You know, get ARC readers. You can go onto like Facebook and find groups of ARC readers and connect with them. Have them build a street team of ARC readers who will read your book and post reviews of it everywhere. There's a lot of things you can do that are fairly inexpensive that get you out in the public attention, but it does take a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the idea of putting them into those little shared book spaces. Mm-hmm. That is smart, because to know that something from your neighborhood or one of your neighbors wrote a book, that's really kind of unique that you can have that. See, again, every time I talk to you, I get like 10 more ideas. So I love it.
I tell you
have some great ideas.
One of the things that I started doing here too, is I would make up these little packages that is a clear plastic bag. And I would put like the first book of my series in there with a bookmark or my business cards that have a QR code for my TikTok videos and my podcast. And I would go put like a sticker on the front that says smile package free book inside. And I would just leave them places around town, like leave them on a park bench, leave them at the train station, leave one just in my neighborhood for people to pick up, there's all these little walking paths along the Rhine with park benches. Go leave one there. And it's just a little note that says, this is a smile package. Here's a free gift to make you smile today.
It's great. Have you had any response from that, from people who picked it up and responded back through the email?
I've had a couple, just a quick little emails that they picked it up and liked it.
Nice. Amazing. What about the whole social media game? What's your thoughts and any learnings from your perspective on promotion on social media?
I have not had a whole lot of response from some of the social media. It's like I've kind of given up on, was it Twitter or X, whatever it is now?
Whatever it is now, yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's still in my automatic posting feed for some of my blogs and things like that, but I don't actively use it anymore. I'm much more active on TikTok because there are so many authors and ARC readers, and it's just such a huge connection for people on there. I have gotten some great author guests from their TikTok videos. I'll be scrolling through and find some just really interesting videos, and I'll send them a message, and then they come on my podcast. It's been a lot of fun. Then some of the authors on there get so imaginative with their videos. It's incredible. There's JC Fuller, who writes mysteries, and my husband and I will sit together to watch her videos because they are just so funny and so imaginative, and they're like her books. I even bought her book because of that, and she's just really fun to watch. Nice. And there's so many people on TikTok like that.
Yeah. I love how they reward creators there. They're really good to get your content out there. And I love the interaction. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
it's been fun.
Love it. Love it. What other tips from a podcaster's point of view? What makes a good guest for you on your show as an author? How can an author prepare and have a good experience on a podcast? What would you give them as advice as a guest?
I tell you, one thing, definitely be able to describe your books, because it is really interesting how many people struggle to tell somebody what their book is about. They'll, have to pause and really think about it. It's like, just write up a little blurb that you keep next to your desk or something so that you can practice that every once in a while, so that you can be able to very seamlessly tell somebody about what your book is about. And make sure that you have something. If somebody asks if you want to read from your book, have a passage that you read for everything. If you go do a book signing or you go do an interview, have a passage that you could read a little bit or a lot, depending on what they need. But have it ready to go anytime you do an interview, just in case they ask.
Nice. I like that. What about your thoughts about audiobooks? How do you feel about those?
Oh, I actually have created a sample audiobook for my first book in my series, just trying to learn how to put together an audiobook. And it's a free giveaway on my website, but I absolutely adore audiobooks. They can really bring in a lot of followers for different genres, because people do like audiobooks. You can listen to them in the car. You can listen to them while you're at work. You can listen to them, so many places. But for indie authors, it is very, very expensive to create an audiobook professionally, because you have to hire the talent to read it if you're not going to do it yourself. You have to get the studio time to do it. And just the whole production is really expensive. And if you want to do it in different languages, then you might as well just double and triple the cost. I mean, the cheapest one that a friend of mine told me, it was about $3,000 per book. So they are very expensive for indie authors to produce, but they can also bring in really good revenue for you if you can afford that first payout.
On top of everything else you're paying for as an author, that's another whole level, right?
Yeah, that's one thing I don't think a lot of people realize. It's like, for me, I've put out 7 books now, and I'm working on 2 more. I've got the podcast, I'm doing the magazine, and I'm paying for website hosting, domains. We had to just spend like €300 on the flipbook program for the magazine that I'm going to be putting out. You have to pay for people to design covers, to do editing. to do, just everything that goes along with this, buying the lighting and the mic equipment, the interface to do the podcast and the programs to edit. And whenever you don't have any income coming in and you're just constantly paying out all of these outgoing expenses, it can really start to get very draining. Like I don't even know how many times I will sit down with my husband and say, do you want me to just stop this and just go get a job? Just someplace that's actually bringing in money and not doing this. And he's like, not yet, because we discussed before I started all this that there would be so many years that there would not be an income because you have to get set up. You have to get known before you really see an income. And so I still have a few more years before I have to worry about that. But for me, it's just so frustrating to keep paying out constantly to produce this stuff because I love doing it. But it still can get kind of depressing every once in a while whenever I'm sitting there balancing all of my financial sheets. And I'm just like,
yeah,
I want to see more money coming in.
yeah. Before we jump to your magazine, I want to talk about that because I think that's brilliant. But again, tell everybody more about the podcast, where we can find the show, and your website and all that great stuff as well. And then I want to jump in and talk about the magazine as well.
So, well, thanks to another author, I have learned to make everything very simple to find. If you put in @Burckhardt Books, you can find just about everything. The website is burckhartbooks.com, and the podcast is Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt. If you search most of the major podcast hosting sites, you can find it. It's also on our website. It's just burckhartbooks.com/podcast. You can find all of the episodes there. Or our host site is Buzzsprout. So it's bookbanter.buzzsprout.com. And you can find all of the episodes on there.
Amazing. Amazing. So you mentioned the magazine to me, and I can't stop thinking about it. I think it's brilliant. I know it's early days and you've got lots of work ahead of you, but can you give the authors an idea of what you're planning in support of your authors on your show? I think you have a gem of an idea. I am extremely jealous, and I can't wait to see the final product. But can you talk about this magazine idea?
I started thinking about, with the podcast, since I do audio only, that cuts out a lot of people, because if you can't hear, or you have hearing problems, or you just don't like listening to podcasts, I'm not going to be catching you in my audience. So I was trying to think of another way to bring my authors that I'm talking to the market. And so I decided to do a flip book magazine called Book Banter Magazine, which is a companion to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt, the podcast. And our first issue comes out on October 1st. It's going to be a Halloween spooktacular. And I know that's tacky, but I don't care because I love Halloween. So I'm going to have fun with it. And my feature author, because I want to put something that is exclusive to the magazine in every issue that makes it special and separate from the podcast. But my feature author is an interview with Mercedes Lackey. I am still just beside myself that I got to do that. And it also features a bunch of authors who I've interviewed on the podcast who, since it's a Halloween special, if they wrote horror novels, if they wrote anything spooky or mystery, and I've got people from, young readers to comic books, nonfiction. I mean, I'm trying and bring a very cross genre selection for all ages and interests, and there's going to be something for everybody. But the magazine will have clickable links so that whenever you read about an author you like, you can click to find their website. You can click on their book to go buy the book. And everything will have their most recent work or anything that's tied to the topic for that magazine. And it's going to be, I'm going to try to set this up where I'm doing monthly. Wow. And then right before Christmas, I want to put out a special edition of this that is a book buying guide that will have a page for every author who has been on my podcast since season 1, since we have never done this before. And then going forward, it will be a book buying guide for each season of the podcast.
Smart. There's going to be people rewinding this and going, wait a minute. How come I've never thought of this before? Any response from some of the authors that have caught wind of what you're doing, or do they even know?
Yeah, some of them do, because as I'm writing the articles about them, I'm sending it to them to look at it and say, tell me what you think. Is there something else that you would like in here? Is there something in here you don't want in this article? And, plus they're also editing their page for me.
Nice.
And some of them who just, thought it was absolutely wonderful, and they're grateful that, they're getting their books out in front of more people again. And it's like one of the young reader authors that she writes this Spooky Sleuths series, and it's like perfect for Halloween. And she just really thought that it was such a great idea that she just had her 4th book in that series drop recently, like last month, I think. So this gets that out for people for Halloween.
See, everyone, I told you that if you have some time with Dianne, your brain is going to hurt because of all the great ideas, and that she just keeps coming and coming and coming. There's probably you probably got like a whole bucket of ideas off camera that you're not even going to talk about yet, but they're just waiting for time in your calendar to bring the next idea. I love how you think and how you plan. And
well, I was joking with somebody the other day. It's like, okay, I must just hate sleep because I keep coming up with more projects.
I love the support of your husband as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love that your community supports you. Your guests love you. There's a lot of good things happening right now for you. And now we just need the money to kind of come and support that, which would be great.
Yeah, that's like the only thing that's missing is income.
Yeah.
But and it's one of those things where I only ever entered the very first book that I wrote, The Into the West, The Orphan Train. That's the only book I've ever entered into a contest. I've never entered anything else. And I keep thinking I need to start doing more things like that, entering contests and, starting doing more interviews and things to get people to notice that book series is there. Because even though I don't have very many reviews on my books, the ones that I have are good. The one person who rated me the lowest, it was so funny because this series I actually advertise as a novella series. They're short reads for busy people. They're all about like anywhere from 150 to 250 pages. So it's not like a huge novel. And they're cliffhangers. They're a cliffhanger series that's based on the old movie shorts that they used to show in movie theaters before the main feature, like The Lone Ranger or Red Rider, those kinds of things. And whenever the book ends on a cliffhanger, then the next book in the series goes back before the cliffhanger, retells the ending from a different point of view and gives you a new perspective on that. And then it goes on from there. And the guy who left me like a 3-star review, he said, too short, ends in a cliffhanger. And I was like, okay, he actually just graded me down for giving him exactly what I tell him he's going to get. And this is one of those things where I always tell people, don't worry about reviews, because you're always going to have people who love you. You're going to have people who hate you. You're going to have people who don't care. Here, this guy actually have that review up on the wall to remind me not to take reviews too seriously, because this guy actually graded me down for giving him exactly what I said I was giving him.
That's hilarious. I love that. It's perfect. And I love that you have it up there in front of you as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good. I love it. Again, the podcast is growing really well.
Yeah.
You're coming up to your birthday episode, which is really kind of cool. You get to talk about your own book on your show, which is going to be fun. And if you are looking for guests, I
forgot to tell you, the other book that I'm working on that's in tandem with the Free Bad Haircuts with Each Craniotomy is a book called The Touch. It's an FBI thriller about a woman who is a retired profiler. And one of the cases that she had worked on becomes active again. And so they come to her and they're like, we know you're retired. You don't have to come in, but can we bring some of this new stuff to you and get your thoughts on it? And so she's like working as a consultant on this story. And this was a way for me to use all of my FBI profiler information for this new crime series. And what's really fun about this is that I actually took a seminar with Robert Ressler whenever I was studying to be an FBI profiler. He is one of the 3 people who helped create the behavioral science unit for the FBI. And my regular profiling professor at my university is one of the lead detectives who helped catch the BTK killer. And I actually studied that case with him while I was in school. And he was just a fantastic instructor. I learned so much from him. And then getting to hear about how they actually solved that case whenever I studied the case file before it was solved, it was just really incredible getting to see those 2 sides of this. And I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and that's where BTK was. I remember when I was a child in the 70s, he was the boogeyman. And so it was really interesting for going to college and studying the case and then finding out how they actually ended up catching him. It was a really valuable education.
Amazing. It's amazing. You have so many layers to who you are and what you know, and I just love it. I could talk to you all day, but again, we can't do that because we have things to do. You have a very busy calendar. I love it. So for your podcast, are you still looking for guests? I know you're getting a lot of guests coming to you, but if you are looking for guests, what kind of guests would be good for your show?
I am trying to make sure that I have a great cross selection in all of the guests that I bring to the show. I want to have, authors from all different, faiths and beliefs and genres and just absolutely everything from, I've had comic book authors. I've had nonfiction authors. I'm looking actively for cookbook authors. I really desperately want a cookbook author who might want to pair with me to work on the magazine, to have their cookbooks in the magazine as well. So, just anybody and everybody. The only thing is I try not to get like too spicy of romance, especially with their covers, because everything is family friendly that I do.
Okay.
And as long as it's, not anything that's too outrageous on the cover or the title, then I'm looking for romance authors too. I actually have only had like 1 romance author that I've spoken to. So I actually need some romance authors. But yeah, just anybody and everybody, as long as it's something that would be considered, family friendly, that, because there are a couple of younger people that I know listen to my podcast. So I don't want anything too outrageous, but yeah, anything that is just about any genre, I'm open to.
Love it. What is your youngest author?
I don't remember. I know yours beats me by quite a bit. I think mine was like 12.
Yeah, mine was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, how do you write a book at 5? I have no idea. That's crazy, but I love it. I love it. I just love having time with these amazingly creative people as guests on our show and hearing the story behind the story, who they are as people. Listening to you, I'm inspired just having time in your calendar. So that's kind of how I leave every episode. And you've way over delivered today and given me so much of your time. So thank you for doing that, Dianne. And I just want to keep encouraging you to keep going, keep doing what you're doing. You're blazing trails for all of us, either as a fellow podcaster or other authors. You just keep giving and giving and giving. So just want to thank you for that and for making time for me and to sitting down and just chatting today. I love it.
Well, one of the things is I know how much I struggle sometimes with marketing and getting things to the right places to connect with the audience. So if there's ever anything that I can do to make it easier for the next person coming behind me, I want to do it, because I know how frustrated I get trying to find the right markets and do all this, because, I worked in marketing and advertising for like 20 years. I was the advertising manager for a newspaper for a long time. And I mean, so I know how to do this, but markets are changing daily with the internet, all the apps, all of the social media programs that keep popping up. It is a constant struggle to find where your market is now, because where Twitter used to be the hottest thing, now people are leaving it in droves. Now, TikTok is really hot, but now there's other things that are popping up too. There's new programs every day, and it is a constant process to find where your market is to connect to them. And it can be draining. It can be so discouraging. It can make you just go, it's not even worth it. Why am I doing this? So if there's ever anything that I can do to help people find their markets and to make it easier for them when it doesn't cost me anything but some time, I'm going to do it.
Amazing. Amazing. Everyone listening, make sure you go check out the Book Banter podcast. We'll have links to everything as well. You're listening to a podcast right now. Just head over there, hit the follow button, leave a review and all the things. We do that anyway. But just go over there right now and just, where would they start before I let you go? What's a good episode to start on for you? Go back to the beginning, the most recent. Where do we go?
Well, if they want to know about me, the very first issue is who am I? It's just talking about who I am and why I'm starting it. But some of the fun ones, if you can find, I don't remember what episode number is, but in my season 2, in Zondi, he is so much fun. I think I ended up splitting his interview into like 2 or 3 episodes because there was just so much there. He is a musician. He's an author. He's an award-winning author. He won like the Bram Stoker Award for his YA book. Owar Mosaic, I think is what it's called. Ooh, I was just reading it last night too. But he also is like a stand-in actor. He has done stand-in work on The Mandalorian, the Star Wars TV show.
Wow.
I mean, the guy is just incredible, and he is so funny, and it was so much fun talking to him. That is a great episode to listen to. J.C. Fuller, who I talked about, that's a mystery author, she was so much fun. If you like comic books, Francesca Maria has a great comic book series that we talk about on her episode. And gosh, and if you need something for young readers, Natasha Dean, she's the one who she writes the Spooky Sleuth series. She's got some incredible books for kids.
Amazing. And then again, for the magazine, is this something we can subscribe to? How does that work?
You will be able to subscribe to it. I have to get the site live. It'll be live on October 1st. And I'm going to start the week before putting up stuff all over social media where people can find it. And it'll be linked with my podcast. Since it's a companion to the podcast, I want people to be able to find it. And I will, as soon as it's live, there'll be links in the description of every podcast to find the magazine.
Okay, good. Because I'll be signing up for that. So, because I can't wait to see it. You showed me some sneak peeks and I'm thrilled. So, I love it. You've given me so much time. I want to let you go because I know you got lots to do. Thank you for being you. And I hope that we get to talk more in the future. I'll keep the door open. I'd love to have you back anytime you want to come back and chat more. But,
that would be great. I love talking to you. It's so much fun.
It's again, you make me shake my head every time I meet with you. I need to go do something today now that I've spoken to you. So I love it. Thank you so much, Dan, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Living the Next Chapter. Did you know that we have more episodes than we can release? So, if you want to get the most recent episode of Living the Next Chapter and you want to jump the line, head over to our YouTube channel And make sure you subscribe, follow, ring the bell, whatever you need to do over there on YouTube. And you will get the most recent episodes of Living the Next Chapter way in advance of everyone else. Get the most recent episode of Living the Next Chapter right now. You can hear the episodes we recorded today, yesterday, right now on Living the Next Chapter's YouTube channel. I'd love to see you over there. Please share, tell the world. And we'll see you on our YouTube channel, and check out the amazing authors coming up on Living the Next Chapter. Thanks for your support.